All right, welcome back to U.S. History. Today we're getting ready for the civics test. All right, so what is the civics test? It's 50 questions derived from the 100 question immigration test, okay? And this is going to teach you the basic rules of the road. Because here's what's happening. Very soon, you get to vote. You get the keys to the car. And they want you to know what the different votes mean. They want you to understand what's going on so that you know what you're doing when you're voting. Sound fair? All right, let's get into it. Okay, there are three branches of government. This is a good time for me to tell you. Get some note cards out. You can watch this video, but that doesn't mean you're learning. You need to take notes. Even better, flashcards. Okay, make some flashcards. So, legislative branch, boom. What does it do? Flip it over, makes the laws. Executive branch enforces the laws. Judicial branch reviews the laws. Okay, so here we go. This is what you've learned so far. There are three branches of government. What are they? Exactly. Legislative, executive, judicial. Cool. Who makes the laws? Which branch makes the laws? The legislative branch. Okay. Which branch declares a law unconstitutional? The judicial branch. Okay. They review the laws. They have more than this function, but their primary function for right now is going to be if you pass a law, they're going to hold it up to the Constitution and they're going to say, yes, this law is okay, or no, this law is unconstitutional. Okay, let's keep going. So, what's the legislative branch called? Like the actual place where they make the laws. That's called Congress. Okay? In the executive branch, there's a lot to it, but who is the head of the executive branch? The president. You can think about it like this. The chief executive officer is the person that runs the company. The chief executive officer of the United States is the president. So think CEO, executive, president. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, in the legal, they have a lot of different jobs, but when it comes to laws, they can either sign the law. So here's what's going to happen. Okay, Congress is going to pass the law. It's going to go to the president. He now has a choice, or she can either sign the law and it becomes a law, or they can veto the law. Veto means I forbid. Well, if you veto the law, then it goes back to the Congress and they can overturn the veto, but that rarely happens because you need a majority, a supermajority. Okay? And then the Supreme Court, this SCOTUS, that just means Supreme Court of the United States. They do different things, but for our purposes, they can look at the law and they can say it's unconstitutional or it's good to go. Okay, we feel good about three branches of government? Awesome. All right, so here we're going to talk about Congress. Now, Congress is part of which branch of government? The legislative branch. Excellent. Okay, so now Congress is divided into two parts, the Senate and the House of Representatives. In the Senate, each state gets two. Doesn't matter if you've got a large population or a small population, it's based on equal representation. Equal. Every state gets two. Hawaii gets two. Texas gets two. How many senators are in your state? The answer, two. Okay? There's 50 states. Each one gets two. How many senators are there total? 100. All right? Does that make sense? All right, cool. You're a senator. You serve for 6 years. That means once you're elected, you're going to serve for 6 years. And you represent the entire state. Very good. Let's move on. So, one state might have, 20 million people, and another state might only have 5 million people, but they have the same amount of senators. That doesn't seem fair. So in the House of Representatives, it's based on proportional representation, okay? And that's 435 total. And then if you have more people in your state, so again, California, they've got 50 plus representatives, but another state might only have 5 representatives. It's based on the size of the population. Now, in the House of Reps, you serve for 2 years, and you represent the people of your district. Now, this is interesting because maybe you've got people that live in, you could have representatives that represent more of a city, more of an urban group, and then you could have a representative that represents rural groups, and they might not want the same thing. They might be in the same state, say California. If you're along the coast, or if you're more inland, if you're in the city, or maybe you're out where the farming is more prevalent in Central California, you could have different opinions on the issues, okay? So this is more of a localized representation. So how did we get this situation where we had equal representation and proportional representation? One plan was called the Virginia Plan. This is going all the way back when we're making the Constitution. And this is all, the Virginia Plan said 3 branches of government, bicameral legislature. That just means you have Congress split up, okay? Bi meaning two chambers, okay? And so Congress has 2 chambers. It has the House of Representatives and it has the Senate. All you need to know: Virginia Plan, proportional representation; New Jersey Plan, equal representation. Bam, that's how we got Congress, okay? That's the history of it. They call it the Great Compromise. They make one based on equal representation, and then they make the other house based on proportional representation, okay? So they kind of take the Virginia Plan, the New Jersey Plan, they put it together. This is called the Great Compromise. Does everybody feel good about knowing that? Okay, awesome. Let's keep going.
As your body grows bigger,
your mind must flower.
It's great to learn,
'Cause knowledge is power.
It's Schoolhouse Rocky, the chip off the block of your favorite Schoolhouse Rock. I'm just a bill.
Woo, you sure gotta climb a lot of steps to get to this Capitol building here in Washington. Well, I wonder who that sad little scrap of paper is.
I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long wait while I'm sitting in committee, but I know I'll be a law someday. At least I hope and pray that I will, but today I am still just a bill.
Gee, Bill, you certainly have a lot of patience and courage.
Well, I got this far. When I started, I wasn't even a bill. I was just an idea. Some folks back home decided they wanted a law passed, so they called their local congressman, and he said, "You're right, there ought to be a law." Then he sat down and wrote me out and introduced me to Congress, and I became a bill. And I'll remain a bill until they decide to make me a law. I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I got as far as Capitol Hill. Well, now I'm stuck in committee, and I'll sit here and wait while a few key congressmen discuss and debate whether they should let me be a law. I hope and pray that they will, but today I am still just a bill.
Listen to those congressmen arguing. Is all that discussion and debate about you?
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones. Most bills never even get this far. I hope they decide to report on me favorably, otherwise I may die.
Die?
Yeah, die in committee. Oh, but it looks like I'm going to live. Now I go to the House of Representatives and they vote on me.
If they vote yes, what happens?
Then I go to the Senate and the whole thing starts all over again.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And if they vote for me on Capitol Hill, well, then I'm off to the White House where I'll wait in a line with a lot of other bills for the president to sign. And if he signs me, then I'll be a law. How I hope and pray that he will. But today I am still just a bill.
You mean even if the whole Congress says you should be a law, the president can still say no?
Yes, that's called a veto. If the president vetoes me, I have to go back to Congress and they vote on me again, and by that time you're so
By
old.
that time, it's very unlikely that you become a law. It's not easy to become a law, is it?
No, but how I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill.
He signed your bill. Now you're a law.
Oh, yes.
All right, we're back. Here we go. Let's talk about some powers of government. There are 3 branches of government. What are they? Legislative, executive, judicial. They all have different functions. We're going to call this one here the war power. Only Congress can declare war. This is supposed to be a W. But the executive branch, the president, he is the commander-in-chief. And then we have different rules of engagement, and the judicial branch can get involved with what we're doing and make sure that everybody's running a tight ship. So we take the war power and we divide it up into the three branches of government. We take the lawmaking power and we divide it up. Only the legislative branch can make the law. Only the executive branch can sign it into law or veto a law, and then the judicial branch can declare a law unconstitutional. Does that make sense? We take one power and we divide it up divide it up amongst these branches of government in hopes that one branch of government will not become too powerful. Are you tracking? Okay, we're going to call that separation of powers, okay? So in this case, I talked about the war power being divided up, but we could talk about law power, other power, things like that. Okay. This is part of our system of checks and balances. Again, we don't want one branch, okay, our founding fathers feared returning to some type of monarchy. They did not want the president to have unlimited power. So the legislative branch has a lot of power. The judicial branch has some power, and then they check and balance each other out. In order to get something done, you need the agreement of all the branches so that no one branch can get too powerful. Does that make sense? Do you feel good about that? Let's move on.
Wondered who has the authority to make laws or punish people who break them? When we think of power in the United States, we usually think of the president, but he does not act alone. In fact, he is only one piece of the power puzzle, and for very good reason. When the American Revolution ended in 1783, the United States government was in a state of change. The Founding Fathers knew that they did not want to establish another country that was ruled by a king. So the discussions were centered on having a strong and fair national government that protected individual freedoms and did not abuse its power. When the new Constitution was adopted in 1787, the structure of the infant government of the United States called for three separate branches, each with their own powers, and a system of checks and balances. This would ensure that no one branch would ever become too powerful, because the other branches would always be able to check the power of the other two. These branches work together to run the country and set guidelines for us all to live by. The legislative branch is described in Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution. Many people feel that the Founding Fathers put this branch in the document first because they thought it was the most important. The legislative branch is comprised of 100 U.S. senators and 435 members in the U.S. House of Representatives. This is better known as the U.S. Congress. Making laws is a primary function of the legislative branch, but it is also responsible for approving federal judges and justices, passing the national budget, and declaring war. Each state gets 2 senators and some number of representatives depending on how many people live in that state. The executive branch is described in Article 2 of the Constitution. The leaders of this branch of government are the President and Vice President, who are responsible for enforcing the laws that Congress sets forth. The President works closely with a group of advisors known as the Cabinet. These appointed helpers assist the President in making important decisions within their area of expertise, such as defense, the Treasury, and Homeland Security. The executive branch also appoints government officials, commands the armed forces, and meets with leaders of other nations. All that combined is a lot of work for a lot of people. In fact, the executive branch employs over 4 million people to get everything done. The third branch of the U.S. government is the judicial branch and is detailed in Article 3. This branch is comprised of all the courts in the land, from the federal district courts to the U.S. Supreme Court. These courts interpret our nation's laws and punish those who break them. The highest court, the Supreme Court, settles disputes among states, hears appeals from state and federal courts, and determines if federal laws are constitutional. There are 9 justices on the Supreme Court, and unlike any other job in our government, Supreme Court justices are appointed for life, or for as long as they want to stay. Our democracy depends on an informed citizenry, so it is our duty to know how it works and what authority each branch of government has over its citizens. Besides voting, chances are that sometime in your life you'll be called upon to participate in your government, whether it is to serve on a jury, testify in court, or petition your congressperson to pass or defeat an idea for a law. By knowing the branches, who runs them, and how they work together, you can be involved, informed, and intelligent.
vote or wishing to change a vote? If not, on this vote, the yeas are 59, the nays are 41, the 60 vote.
All right, here we go. Bill of Rights. If you remember, the Bill of Rights are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. What are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution called? 1, 2, 3. Bill of Rights. You got it. All right. So not everybody wanted the Constitution. Some people were like, hey, man, there's not a guarantee of freedom of speech or not a guarantee of this or that. And so they passed the Bill of Rights to be the first 10 amendments.
The first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution, also known as the Bill of Rights, were ratified or passed over 200 years ago. But even though they're a bit, well, old, these first 10 amendments are still the most debated and discussed section of our Constitution today. So can you remember what they are? Let's take a look. The First Amendment is the freedom of speech, press, religion, assembly, and petition. This may be the most revered of the amendments. The First Amendment protects our rights to say and write our opinions, worship how we please, assemble together peacefully, and petition our government if we feel the need. The Second Amendment is the right to bear arms. The original intent of the Second Amendment was to protect colonists from the invading British soldiers, but it now guarantees that you have the right to own a gun to defend yourself and your property. The Third Amendment is called the Quartering Amendment. It was written in response to the British occupation and as a result of the colonists having to house or quarter soldiers in their homes during the American Revolution. Because of this amendment, our government can never force us to house soldiers in our home. The Fourth Amendment is the right to search and seizure. The police can't come into our home without a search warrant and take our personal property. Today, many concerns have arisen about our rights to privacy and technology. For example, can the government track your location with your smartphone, or can social media postings such as on Facebook and Twitter be used without a warrant? On to the fifth. It's all about due process. You've probably heard the phrase, "I plead the Fifth," in movies or on TV. They're talking about the Fifth Amendment, which says that you don't have to take the witness stand against yourself if you may end up incriminating yourself. Okay, we're halfway done. The Sixth and Seventh Amendments are about how the legal system works. If you're accused of a crime, you have the right to a speedy public trial and an impartial jury. You also have the right to a lawyer and the right to take the stand if you choose. This is important because it will prevent the accused from sitting in prison forever and insist that the prosecution proceed with undue delay. The Seventh says you have the right to a jury trial where 12 impartial peers decide your innocence or guilt in the courtroom as opposed to a judge doing it all alone. The Eighth Amendment prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. Is a death penalty cruel? Is it unusual? It's hard for Americans to agree on the definitions of cruel and unusual. The Ninth and 10th Amendments are called the non-rights amendments. They say that the rights not listed in the Bill of Rights are retained by the people in the states. You have other rights that are not listed in the Constitution, and the states have the right to make their own policies, like instituting state taxes. So, now you know all 10 amendments. Can you remember them all? If not, remember this. The Bill of Rights are a crucial piece of American history, and though society has undergone many changes these past 200 and some years, the interpretation and application of these amendments are as vital today as they were when they were written.
That's it. You made it through part 1. Make sure you watch part 2 and part 3 for total coverage, and then you will be ready for your civics test. Today, you learned there are 3 branches of government. What are they? Hopefully you remember. Legislative, executive, judicial. Exactly. Now let's talk about that legislative branch. What's that called? Like the actual building, the actual place. Congress. All right, Congress is divided into what? The Senate and the House of Representatives. If you're a senator, you serve for how long? 6 years. If you're a representative, you serve for how long? 2 years. Okay? Do you know the difference between equal representation and proportional representation? Hopefully you do. Because if you don't, you just rewind the video and watch it again. Make sure you know that. And we'll get to, how about, what is the other one? Separation of powers. Checks and balances. Do you know what that means? Okay, we don't want one branch of government having too much power, right? Don't forget about that. Okay, cool. You're good to go. On to part 2, and we'll see you soon.